Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Manitoba Museum for our last Holidays at Home program here at the Manitoba Museum. We're so excited that we've got to spend the last 2 weeks with Travel Manitoba, offering us or helping us offer you guys some free programming at home. And so this is going to be the last one we're going to do today. Don't forget, we still have our scavenger hunt video with accompanying questions that you can still enter. And if you answer all the questions, you can, I think there's a prize of a family membership, which is going to be great when we're back and open again. So hopefully you'll get a chance to do that before Sunday for your chance at a wonderful family prize. So here we are at our iconic diorama here at the Manitoba Museum. Here, for those of you who are joining, most of you I think are joining from Manitoba. Hopefully all of you have had the chance to visit us once upon a time. If there's anyone who's never been to the Manitoba Museum, let me know in the chat. For those of you who have visited before, I'm going to take you on a little bit of a different adventure today. What we're going to do is we're going to explore the Manitoba biomes. Most of you, when you guys come to the museum, you venture on the path this way. We're actually going to go backwards today just to have a different feel and a different experience. But when you've been here, and I see that some of you haven't, you come across this beautiful diorama. I'm going to get my friend Shauna to kind of zoom into it. And here we see the traditional bison hunt of the Red River settlement. And so you can see this is really an iconic diorama for us because this is where man and nature meet. And so, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about the human history today, as well as nature that takes a big role in Manitoba. And I mentioned biomes. So biomes are different areas with different plants and different environments. And so we're going to kind of explore them. And how a museum is actually based is when you're walking on the normal path, you start in the Arctic and you make your way to Winnipeg. Today, we're going to go from Winnipeg because that's where we are today. And we're going to explore all the way to the Arctic on our adventure today. So I hope you guys are ready to join me. And if so, follow me because you really don't have a choice. My wonderful friend Shauna is going to be the one following me on behalf of all of you. And we are going to go first into our first gallery here at the museum, and that is the Winnipeg Gallery. So when you get into this gallery, you really get a sense that you've been transported back into a specific time. And this gallery is meant to be the 1920s of Winnipeg. However, we've got a little bit of a theme happening here with the strike, the events of the Winnipeg General Strike of 1919. So very close to the 1920s. You can see in the background here, this used to be our old city hall. This is what some people used to call the gingerbread city hall. One of the fun facts about this is that they had one design scheme and they replicated the design on all four sides. And it's kind of an architectural marvel that took a little bit of Russian, Ukrainian, a modern twist for our city hall in the turn of the century. So here we have this beautiful city hall. Unfortunately, this city hall no longer exists. It has made way for the current city hall that is in its place. Now, one thing you might notice here in our gallery is that in the middle of this room, there is a train track. And trains play a very important role here in Winnipeg. Winnipeg was very much created thanks to the railway. So some communities, like I heard Harold Hatcher's on here. Harold Hatcher, you guys are part of Transcona. You guys have a very important history to do with the railway. So the Transcona rail yards, you guys, the reason you guys were a city, the city of Transcona long ago is because of the rail yard. And you guys grew because of that. And so Winnipeg was the hub. It's in the center of North America. So it really grew because there were 4 different railway companies trying to converge, and Winnipeg just seemed like the obvious place right in the center of North America, to be kind of a hub. And this is why sometimes we're referred to as the Chicago of the North, because they are also a transportation city. So now I mentioned that our city here is divided in half. Where Shauna is on this side, if you can zoom in and look at our lovely southern home and the theater, this is the South District. So we see a little bit of luxury over here. And as you move towards the north side, it's a little bit more of a working class area. So we have a lot of places of labor temple that is also used as our all people's mission in other times, which was a place for people to go when it's the all people's mission. It's a place for people who recently immigrated here to Winnipeg to come and learn English as a new language, but also to familiarize themselves with living in Canada. So it's kind of a early step to gaining immigration, or is it kind of a social service for newly arrived immigrants. If you come over this way, we see a pawn shop is located upstairs. We're not going to get to go see it today, but I highly suggest that on your next visit, you go venture up those stairs. And also in the working class, we had a lot of factories. So we're going to make our way into one of our newest galleries. Follow me to the Winnipeg Gallery. So you might not have had the chance to come to our newest gallery. It just recently opened up last October. But of course, with COVID, we've had a few times where we've been closed over the years, or over this past year. So hopefully, if you got the chance to come and see it, there's a wonderful theater that kind of gives you a glimpse of the history of Winnipeg. But what I want to come show you is this beautiful wall. I'm just gonna put that down. So over here, we have this themed wall that really kind of encapsulates Winnipeg as a city from our beginnings as an Indigenous homeland, showcasing that the Forks was a trading space, and that many different Indigenous First Nations came to gather here for trade. We talk about how we became a city. So from the Red River settlement, stories like, for instance, our first general, our Governor General of Manitoba, he was actually arrested and put in jail, and his wife baked him a loaf of bread, and he used that to escape. And as well as, Winnipeg and Manitoba is the city of immigration over here. And so we just really have a lot of different cultures kind of convening here in this space, from Ukrainian backgrounds, Filipinos, as well as a lot of African families who've come here. And so, we're really a big hub for that. We're also a city of contrast. Over here, so we're not without our stories. The Winnipeg General Strike, I touched a little bit about as a big event that is talked about in the Winnipeg Gallery, but also things like the 60s scoop, where Indigenous children were taken from their home. What else? The missing and Indigenous the missing and Indigenous women, those ribbons there, we're not without our stories here in Manitoba. They're not always great, but, we have to share them and be positive about, making great changes. We also have a really big military history here in Winnipeg. So you can see some of the stories. My favorite thing here is Ferdinand the Stuffed Bull down here. So this is a Hong Kong, the Battle of Hong Kong, where the Winnipeg Grenadiers were captured during that battle. And so Ferdinand was sent to them, and they kept him as kind of a mascot, and they kept him, kept the prisoners of war happy, and you can see him in that image there. Shauna's doing a great job of zooming in. Over here, you know, Winnipeg, you know, the two rivers, the Red River, the Assiniboine rivers, we're not without our flood histories, but also how we get our water, how it comes all the way from Shoal Lake in a whole different treaty territory. So that's its own impeccable story. And here we have some old wooden pipes from where people used to get their water. And we have another little fun bug there. That is a typhoid stuffy, because you know what, unfortunately, a lot of people got sick drinking water out of these pipes. And last but not least, we are a city of celebrations. So you know, this is not a great time for us. We'd really love to celebrate, and we've been kind of sticking at home and trying to find ways to celebrate. But just remember all the wonderful things we like to celebrate, you know, sports, curling, football with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, hockey, we can't forget being Canadian, loving our hockey, but also, you know, Indigenous Day, as well as things like folklorama and the Fringe festivals, all these things that we like to celebrate. So this kind of encapsulates a little bit of Winnipeg. And of course, there could be way more themes and way more stories, but hopefully, you know, when you do get the chance, these stories are all here in these digital, wonderful touch screen things that as soon as we're able to touch things, I highly encourage you to read up about these stories. Now that we've visited Winnipeg, we're going to go explore a little bit further. We're going to go take a look at the grasslands. So come with me, a wonderful story about the pronghorn. Okay, so here we have the pronghorn. For those of you who like to go visit out west by Brandon and Souris area, this probably is a very familiar scene for you guys. We have, minus the pronghorn, because unfortunately the pronghorn no longer lives here in Manitoba. This is an animal that was here long, long ago, but unfortunately, one of the consequences of moving towards agriculture here, we removed all these natural prairie grasses, which is one of their favorite foods. So the pronghorn has moved towards Saskatchewan. Same with the bison. They used to live here in great numbers. Overhunting and the fact that they had a loss of food has pushed them towards the west. The story I really want to tell here is about the natural prairie grasses. And the Indigenous people who lived here before. So there were lots of different groups of First Nations, and you know, they were relied on the food that they had here, considering animals, but as well as the plants who grow here, you know, to sustain their life. Food is a very important need for all of us. So one of the things that they were very resourceful at was to manage their food source. And so when they needed meat, they would come to a field like this and they would manage it. And by managing it is they would burn a section of this plant. Oh, I think I want to make sure everyone can hear me because I'm hearing some beeps.
Corinne, I think
so.
I don't see, oh, there I see you. Okay. We're
okay.
Back.
I'm back. I disappeared. I didn't even know it. Oh, okay. Oh, I think somebody was calling us on the phone. That's why we disappeared. So yes, the problems of using technology in two different ways. So back to my story here of the prairie grasses. So first people would manage the land by burning a section of it. And for those of you at home who are wondering, well, why would they burn a section? Well, think about this. I always like to use the example of bananas. I really like fresh bananas. They're even better when they just have a little still hint of green, you know, freshly picked. The brown bananas tend to get thrown into my freezer for banana bread. I won't touch them once they start to get spotty because those are old bananas. And so if you think of an animal, are they going to go for the fresh plants? Or are they going to go for these plants that have been here for a while? So by burning a section, you're burning most of the plant. You have to remember that there are still plants living under the ground, the roots, that don't get burnt. So these plants are going to come back and they're going to be fresh and tasty. And that's going to attract pronghorns as well as bisons, herds of them, to this spot because they're going to enjoy the fresh food. So this is really managing your food source, which is quite ingenious for First Nations in terms of, you know, them knowing how to use the land, how to manipulate and cultivate the land by producing fresh stuff by simply just burning it. So this is a really good technique. So this is just a little glimpse of our grassland galleries. The remainder of it is actually under construction right now. So hopefully, you know, in the next few months, we're almost done our construction phase of the prairie grass or the grasslands or the prairies. And so hopefully we'll get to see what else is in this gallery space very soon. But for now, we're going to move on to another biome, another area of Manitoba. And this one is personally my favorite, mostly because I have a farm in that area, and it's the Parklands. And so we're going to take a secret door. Go through here. And so the next space is actually quite dark, but one of the spaces that I have yet to ever explore myself is bat caves. So there are these limestone caves just north of the Interlake area by Grand Rapids, the escarpment there. And so in those spaces, you got these limestone caves where lots of bats dwell. And so it's just a really cool spot. So if you come in, you can sometimes, this is a fun place to explore and just kind of get a feel of what it might be like. So while Shauna's exploring in the dark, somebody asked, how do you make your dioramas look so real? So one of the things is that we have researchers who go to a specific place in, they do a lot of research, gathering kind of photo evidence of what the space looks like, but then they also go and collect plants of the area. And I haven't been told exactly what goes into this. They just like to call it the pickle juice solution. And so basically what happens is things like plants dry out. So they're still kind of intact. They're not dead, they're just kind of pickled. And then to give them a little bit of color, we'll just paint them. So then an artist comes in and will do wonderful work of making these plants look real because they are real. As well as, you know, we have wonderful people who can make this plexiglass look like water. And of course, we have a team of curators, including a zoologist on staff who does every effort to collect species from all over Manitoba. And so here you guys can see that this diorama has a bunch of real plants and real animals, and it's made to look like this area, look like the Delta Marsh of Winnipeg, just on the south side of Lake Manitoba. But also we have that artist who painted that visual background to give you that 3D look. So artists really make this super beautiful and natural-like. All right, so this is the Delta Marsh, one of my favorite spots. I'm a Lake Manitoba girl through and through. Lake Winnipeg is okay, but Lake Manitoba is way better. So here we have another great immigration story. This is from the late 1800s. 1894 to be specific, when Ukrainians started to come over and settled here. And Ukrainians really play a big role out in the parklands, especially the Dauphin area. If you've ever been to, they have a Ukrainian festival, it's lots of fun. I might just be guilty just because my husband is from that area and is also Ukrainian. But what they brought with them is they brought a little bit of their culture. So if you're ever traveling in that direction, you can see in the backgrounds of these towns is that they built their famous churches with the onion dome. And it is Ukrainian Christmas today. So you know what? I didn't do this on purpose, but I'm so glad that this is a very good connection to Ukrainian Christmas today. So Merry Christmas, Ukrainian Christmas to those who are celebrating today. So you can see again the dome shape in the background. And my favorite here is this lovely little girl here, you know, using the land and their knowledge of plants again, have gone mushroom hunting. This is one of my favorite things to do with my kids, just near Riding Mountain National Park. You know, we go mushroom picking on our farm, which is just on the edge, and this is one of the things, and we usually enjoy this on our Christmas from picking them in the spring. So, you know, Ukrainians had knowledge of plants, and they brought them of, you know, you can see living off the land over here. Now, over here, hopefully we don't have anyone too skittish. I am not a fan of snakes. However, garter snakes, I'm all for them. So I'm just gonna ask if anybody here has ever been to the Narcisse snake pits. It's a really fun place to go in the spring or in the fall. So right now, all these garter snakes are hibernating. They have one of the largest snake dens in the world near Narcisse, the town. And so we have these beautiful replicated snakes. And are these snakes real? So for the amount of snakes that we have in here, these ones are not real. However, because we're an education department, you know, our zoologist does probably have some specimens in his collection. But these ones down here are not real. So if you're squirmy and you really don't like this spot in the museum, you can take count that these are not real, but they're meant to look like as if we were in the Narcisse snake walking on the trail, looking down from the ledge to see a space that is true, is a treasure here in Manitoba without being noticed. Now, these snakes are not poisonous. They tend to be fairly friendly. However, I wouldn't pick one up. They could bite and they do have a little bit of a sting. But as a child, we would pick them up out in the country all the time. Excellent. Okay, and then we have a question. Did Manitoba artists make the diorama backgrounds? So the one that we just, actually, we're gonna go take a look at the next diorama right now. And that's a really good question. So while we did get, for some of us, some of our dioramas were made by the artist Clarence Tilenius. And so he painted the diorama for the bison. He also did the pronghorn that we saw. We're going to see the caribou and the polar bear that he also drew, or that he also created. The next one is actually going to be, it was a museum staff person, Betsy Thorsten. So she did the artwork on this one right here. So we do have on staff a museum artist. So this is our elk diorama. This one was done by the museum staff. It is, if you were to look in the background, you can actually find this spot in the east side of the Riding Mountain National Park. It is a space, I believe there is a walking trail very close to this, but our artists found this spot and, you know, took several pictures to capture this moment in time. Now, of course, she did this in the 90s when she took these pictures, and she's trying to replicate the 1700s, and we know this because there's some whooping cranes in the background. So on the painted image. And we know that these animals no longer are in existence. What I love about the elk diorama is that he's feeling pretty amorous. He really wants to share his love and collect a harem of elk in the background, and you can see the females all painted in the background. And I just love the extent of how far this diorama goes. And, you know, to tell the story of the elk trying to find a mate. And so when Betsy Thorson, when she went, you know, out in Riding Mountain, she actually came across a puddle. And it's not just any normal puddle that's created by rain, it's created by his urine. And then you can also see dripping on his chest, he's rolled in it. And for everyone who's going, ew, he rolled in his pee, it's okay. That is how he's getting spiffy, and it's like a man putting on cologne, and his harem is going to love it. So this is how he gets fancied up to take one of those lovely elk on a nice date. So we're gonna continue on. This is our last glimpse of the Parklands, where the Boreal Forest meets the grasslands, this mixed woods area. We are now gonna go into the Boreal Forest. So follow me, we're gonna go through another secret door. This one has been propped open for us. So we're coming up to Shauna, favorite animal. So we can't stop without stopping to see her favorite animal. And so here we have the porcupine. And so Shauna really loves this guy. He is a herbivore. He likes to climb up the trees to find the best food. He is a mammal, so he is covered in fur, but he also has all those quills to protect him. And so the porcupine is a very slow, notorious animal. So he's not very good at protecting himself by running away. So these quills help him protect themselves. Now, most of you if you've ever had the chance to come up to a porcupine, you'll see that, you know, when they are scared, they appear to be shooting out porcupine quills. And just so you know, they can't shoot them. What happens is, just like us, when we brush our hair collects on our hairbrush. Well, the porcupine can't brush his quills, so the quills naturally fall off and get stuck amongst the other quills. And so now our porcupine is running scared, and by running scared, he's kind of hopping along like this. And what's happening is he's loosening those quills that have fallen out long ago, just appear to be shaking off. Regardless, these porcupine quills are barbed, so they got a little bit of an edge, and so they can be very pointy. They hurt if you get them in there. And they're very hard to get rid of. So if your dog gets too close, I unfortunately once hit a porcupine with my car, and there were quills in my tires for a very long time. I could not get them out, and I finally decided to just leave them. So almost 10 years later, the quills were still in there when I finally had to get them replaced. So this is, again, Shauna's favorite in the whole museum. She's also always looking for them out in the world because she loves to observe them. So if you've ever seen porcupines, let us know. And oddly enough, one of my favorite animals is in here as well. The timber wolf. We're gonna do it from this side, I think. So the timber wolf, this is the alpha male for his family, and we can see his the alpha female and some cubs over there. They tend to take over homes out in nature. They really like actually taking over former beaver lodges once the water has subsided, which is hilarious because they also really like to eat beavers. It's one of their favorite treats. When we go around, we're going to show you the cubs on the far side, so you can take a sneak peek at those babies. And seeing as we were just talking about beavers, here we have a beautiful specimen of a beaver. So here you can see it. I really like this one because it's not just a beaver sitting on a log. It is a beaver in full swimming mode. So you got the shape of him diving. You can really see his tail. It's going to use it as a rudder, and his feet, and he's going to use those as paddles. And all the fact that he's got a stick in his mouth, really pointing out his front teeth. So for those of you who have ever been annoyed by beavers, you know, if you have a lakeside cabin or you live near one of the rivers here in Winnipeg, you probably have some beavers being in your backyard. Just remember, their teeth are always growing. And so their teeth having always grown, they have to kind of file them down. Same as, you know, us, our nails are always growing. We have to trim them, otherwise they'll get on something. So the beaver is always trimming his front teeth. And so here you can see those front teeth. And the danger is if they don't, I'm gonna get Shauna to point these out over here. Here's an example of a beaver skull where the tooth has continued to grow because this female beaver did not file down her teeth by chewing on those logs. So we have a couple of questions. One was, where do we acquire all these animals? So, you know, these are done by donation. You know, people have found them in the yard. My dog has gotten a hold of some rabbits and scared them. And so I have brought in a couple of rabbits or mice from my own backyard. Also, some of our collection is sought out. So our zoologist really likes to learn about frogs and toads. So during his research, he actually collects specimens. So it's a variety of both things, of collecting dead specimens that we, you know, because we're education, we're trying to figure out, you know, pesticides, how have they changed over the last 100 years? What is this animal eating? And so we're doing a lot of research in collecting these specimens of dead animals. And sometimes they're nice enough to go on display. Is the beaver's fur real or painted? So this is real fur. Because they wanted it to look a little bit like he's swimming, I'm just wondering if they may have added some kind of oil, like a natural oil, to get him to look like that. And over here, we just can see him looking like that. So you can normally see that some animals, others look nice and fluffy. Him is probably strategic. It looks almost like it's painted. Somebody has asked if we were skipping over the non-such. So yes, unfortunately, we're not going to switch to see the non-such. But if you go to our our YouTube channel, Shauna, who's on camera today, she did a one program taking you guys in to the hold of the ship. She did a whole after our morning special the New Year's Eve special. So if you want to learn about the nonsuch, I highly suggest you go look at our YouTube channel for that. And Anya, who's behind the scene, is going to add the link in the chat. Okay, so here as we walk by, Shauna's going to give you a cute little zoom or a zoom peek at our little cubs. And then here you can see them just playing around. And just beside them, you can see that there is a beaver skull that they were gnawing on for supper last night. All right. So here's a new feature that many of you probably have not seen. It got installed right before we closed last year. And so we have this beautiful paint, or it's actually a photo of the new UNESCO site in northern Manitoba by Pachamanaki. And so this is just a nice, beautiful visual of a spot that many of us have probably might not ever get a chance to go see. So it's just a beautiful space within the Boreal Forest in Manitoba. So, you know, this is one of the best galleries, I think, because it really is just, you're walking through the forest and you can just almost feel like you're in a specific moment in time, you know, walking through the forest, seeing your neighbors, as well as seeing some animals that live here in the forest. So I don't know if you want to do a 360 just to kind of give us a view and just kind of imagine this walking path in the Boreal Forest, saying hi to the big moose. And just kind of getting a feel for what it might be. So we had a question about the beaver's involvement in the fur trade while we're here, just before we leave the Boreal Forest. So the beavers were actually a very important part of the fur trade. It's kind of what launched it, you know, fancy hats. So yeah, the beavers played an extremely giant role. So thank you so much for that questions about what about the beavers' involvement with the fur trade. It actually kind of launched the fur trade here in Canada. I'm just going to kind of take a stop and just kind of look at a moment in time. And this is a mini diorama that just kind of shows the OJ Cree method of life. You know, long ago, they lived in villages where they could have been upwards of 800 people living in a space, you know, living together, using the resources, working together to hunt, prepare meat. People were responsible for building homes. We have elders or grandparents who are teaching young children the basics and watching over them. And just really a big community life of how people work together. That whole idea of it takes a village, and you can just see it here with everyone taking some responsibility. And we see these wonderful homes using the resources available. And so their homes are called wigwams. So these particular ones are called wigwams, and they would have been made with birch bark. So the bark would have been taken off a birch tree in a big giant roll, which takes a lot of expertise. I don't know about you, but as a child, I love birch trees, and I used to take the paper off the tree and, you know, couldn't manage more than a couple of inches before it would rip. So the fact that, you know, the knowledge of how to do this is just exceptional. And not only that, they could make baskets that would carry water. I don't think I could make something waterproof that would leak all over the place with that kind of technique, as well as over here, some canoes. You know, just using what is in nature and just having the knowledge of how to do it. Now, next we're coming up to the last thing we're going to talk about in the Boreal Forest, and it's probably my favorite sound in the whole world. When I'm visiting someone's cabin, when somebody's nice enough to let me come visit them, I usually get to hear this beautiful sound of the loon. And so, you know, the loon is one of those tokens. It's such a Canadian symbol. It's on our loonie, hence the name loonie for our dollar coin. And so we can see this beautiful, beautiful image of the loon. And I don't know if you guys can hear it. Well, it's not playing right now. But one of my interesting things about the loon is the placement of its feet. Unlike a duck where its feet are centered in its bottom of its belly, the loon, its legs are further back near its tail, which means that the loon is really good at diving deep into the lake and is a very fast swimmer. However, unlike its counterpart, the duck, where the feet are in the middle of its body, the loon has trouble walking on land. And so there are lots of oral traditional stories that tell us that the loon was once the fastest animal in water, but also one of the fastest ducks or birds on land. And something changed one day when it tried to snatch up the wrong person's lunch. And what ended up happening is someone decided to step on its back, which pushed its legs further back. And if you don't believe the story, you can take a look on its back and you can see the feathers of 2 feet jumping on its back. So this is an oral, a creationist story from oral traditions. And I don't know about you, but I can see those 2 footprints on its back. You can see them left and right, about a size 7.5. Okay, so now we're leaving the Boreal Forest and heading into the Arctic, the northern tip of the province. One of the favorite things is if you haven't explored this gallery from a different perspective, I always like to suggest looking up and seeing these beautiful ribbons that kind of represent the northern lights. So just this nice idea of these beautiful colors. But another Canadian symbol animal, the caribou. So again, we like to put Canadian symbols. The beaver's on our nickel, the loonies on our loonie, and the caribou is on our 25-cent coin. So another majestic Canadian animal. Now, this is an animal that resides in the Arctic, very important to the people who live there, the Inuit, especially the Padlamit Inuit who live just north of us along the Hudson's Bay. And they really relied a lot on the caribou. You know, resources are quite limited in the north. You know, they have rocks, they have moss, they can get driftwood that sails in the Hudson's Bay. They have access to some trees like willows, but the caribou is very important. They are going to use its fur for clothing, to keep warm, blankets. They're going to use the meat to sustain themselves, very good food, as well as antlers and bones to make tools. So this is in the traditional life of the Inuit. And so, you know, over here, we have some beautiful jackets. I just want to make sure, Anya, can you hear me? Because I heard someone can't hear us right now. And so you have, oh, you couldn't hear the loon, sorry. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Shauna, for clarifying that. So here we have some beautiful kids jackets. We have 3 different ones here. So we have the inner jacket. This one is one you would wear inside your home. As you can see, the fur is up against our skin to keep us nice and warm on cold days. When you're going to play outside, not today, today is quite beautiful. You might wear a jacket like this. on top of your indoor jacket. This one is a boy's jacket. We know it's a boy's jacket because it's cut straight. The shoulders are down mostly because hunters don't want to look all big and puffy because, you know, they might get spotted easier by the caribou. They want to be sleek, kind of ninja-like, so they need to look and appear smaller, hence the less rounded shoulders. Whereas a wonderful girl's jacket had these puffy shoulders and this beautiful kind of tail at the front and back. Now, this girl's jacket represents a little bit what women's jacket wear. So there was no real difference except for in size between a kid's jacket and their parents' jacket. So a boy's jacket looks like the dad's jacket, the man's jacket, and the girl's jacket looks like her mom's jacket. And we're gonna go take a quick look at a summer parka. So here is a summer parka called a mumauti. This one is a little different because it's summer. It doesn't need to be really, really warm. You don't need the fur on the outside and on the inside. So you just see the fur on the inside. And as you can see it's very beautifully decorated with the big shoulders. It is a mom's jacket because you have the pouch on the back where a baby would sit. And also moms' bellies tend to grow if they have a child. And so you can see that it's curved, so it allows for that growth in there. So Shona, I don't know if you want to try to get into the back to see where the baby would sit. And just beautifully decorated with a lot of trade beads. These would have been patterns added on felt. And because these jackets, caribou is probably the worst shedding animal there ever is. I have a husky at home and she leaves about a little puppies everywhere through my house, and I have to vacuum almost 3 times a day to keep up with her when she's shedding. Caribou is worse. So these jackets don't have a long shelf life. They last 1 season and then you have to replace them. So all that beadwork would just be taken and transferred onto the next jacket. So, you know, they could add more to their story, which this artwork does tell a story. And you can see over here, the mom kind of talks a little bit about her family by having these 3 white dots that represent her children. Oh, what is the Sama parka made out of? So just like all of these clothing here, they're made out of the caribou fur. So Shauna, if you want to look in here, you can see that fur nice and closely. It's just the reverse side. So we're seeing the skin on the outside and you can see that caribou fur on the inside. That's keeping us nice and warm. And no, it's not too cold. Their summers can get nice and warm like us, but you know, they're not necessarily always as nice and warm as us. Oh, wondering why the girl's jacket has the puffy shoulders? So the girl's jacket and the mom's jacket just look together like in style, but also the little girl, if she has younger siblings, her siblings, she could be tending them while mom is busy doing something. So they might be in her jacket, keeping warm. So she needs those puffy shoulders to hold the child as well. So you see these puffy shoulders allow mom to pull her shoulders in and hold her baby inside here, take it from the back, you know, nurse it, burp it, and then, you know, put it back. Because babies don't tend to wear clothes. The only article of clothing they wear at this time is a diaper. So skin to skin is what's keeping baby nice and warm. And so the girl's jacket just mimics the mom's jacket, but also young girls might have been holding and helping mom with siblings. Okay. We have a question about how warm would their summers get. So my husband travels a lot to the north. He's been there on days where it is warmer than Winnipeg. However, he's been on there. It's kind of a cool spring day, usually about 15 degrees, depending where you're at. Sometimes the coastal weather can actually be warmer than anywhere else. So it just really depends on the area and what kind of wind they're getting. Oh, we made it in time, Shauna. We might lose our polar bear very shortly, but here we have the polar bear, one of the most dangerous carnivores here in Canada. He is actually really good at opportunity to learn from. Most people don't hunt polar bears, although you can hunt polar bears. It's not an ideal thing because they are quite dangerous, but observing a polar bear, you can learn a lot. For instance, how they hunt seal. So seals are tricky. They like to hide in ice holes. We're gonna just come over here and we'll come back to the polar bear. So seals like to think that they're being tricky and they go into these ice holes. So you've got a layer of ice, maybe about 30 centimeters thick, and there's a pocket of air, and then there's the sea. So sometimes seals think they're being really tricky and smart. They're going into these ice holes where they can catch a breath of air before they go swimming again. But that polar bear can smell them through that ice. And so the polar bear will use his big giant paws to break the ice. And this is where Inuits learned a lot about hunting seal from polar bears, is the polar bear was quick. When the polar bear knocked the seal on the head with the ice, the polar bear is also going to use his claws to pull that seal onto the ice very quickly. Because what could happen is those seals have very large lungs. And if that seal gets knocked out, well, he's going to start to swallow lots of water, and then he's going to sink like a stone to the bottom of the Hudson's Bay. And so Inuit learned that I have to be patient in finding a seal, but also I have to be quick before he sinks. So this is where they developed systems to make floats when they caught seal so they could come back and get it later on. So just by observing a polar bear, which is not something they normally hunt, but they would watch from a distance. We have one last thing over here. And this is the inukshuk. An inukshuk is a symbol in the north that helps us with direction. In this particular case, our inukshuk is giving us direction on how to get into the museum and how to exit. So we got these two arms giving us direction on where to go and where we've been. And so the entrance to the museum is just around the corner. Well, we've just been on a very long journey through the whole museum. These inukshuks don't just help people in the north figure out where the closest town is or where the next group of people are. They're also meant to hunt. So on these beautiful pieces of rock, you can see something growing called lichens. And so lichens are something that the caribou like to eat. And in fact, if you remember, we just saw the caribou when they were walking along that rock face. The caribous follow the rock because they're looking for these lichens. And so the lichens attract the caribou, and the Inuits could detract the caribou and send them into another direction. And so this was a hunting technique used. The other thing is it was all about a sense of community in the north and being helpful. So sometimes underneath these rocks, you could find scraps of food or fishing equipment if we were here by a lake or the Hudson's Bay. So there'd be food available for someone who was in need. So it was just about helping people out. And of course, some inukshuks are in loving memory of someone. So that just took us all the way from Winnipeg up to the north, even touching a little bit outside of our province in Nunavut. And we have a couple questions. It is meant to look like a person. So this one in particular is giving us direction. Some of them look like doorways. It's all about the different meanings with these inukshuks. And so I'm just gonna go back is there a meaning behind how the rocks are stacked? So there's a variety of different meanings of how these are stacked. This one in particular kind of looks like a person, sometimes in memory meant to look like a person. The doorways, some that look like a doorway, if you spot one of those, there's usually two doorways. And so that is meant to be a path. So you want to walk from one doorway to the other because there might be dangers on the left or the right. So you want to stay on the path. There might be a secret lake that's covered in snow that's not quite frozen. So sometimes there is meaning of how they're stacked. And I think that's everything. Anya, I'm not sure if you saw any questions that I might have missed. I know I missed a few at the beginning. Okay, so I think with that everything being said, thank you for joining us on our last Holiday at Home program. Thank you so much to Travel Manitoba for helping us with this program and then allowing it to be broadcasted free to you at home. And last but not least, you have just a couple more days to watch the wonderful Shauna, who has been our camera person all day. She's got a wonderful video. And with it, there is a questionnaire that's available on SurveyMonkey. If you fill it out and answer her questions about her tour, you can be entered for that great family membership. So we're very excited, and hopefully you've had lots of fun between our New Year's Eve special, our little narwhal adventure, all of our science gallery, planetarium, planetary conjunction activities. We've had a great 3 weeks with you and offering these wonderful programs thanks to Travel Manitoba. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you very soon.